in this place where I just feel alone, isolated, lonely. I don't feel like anybody else in the family can even relate.
It started with a voice that had been silenced for much too long. A voice that, once silenced, would never be quiet again. Within the hushed silence of a courtroom, the rhythmic beat of footsteps echoed across the shiny floor. Meri Brown, once the reserved observer on the periphery of polygamy, was now taking her first steps into the harsh, unyielding glare of justice.
Usually, our church would say you're divorced. You have to go ask for a divorce.
Yeah.
You have to get paperwork. You have to get approval. You have to prove that the marriage is broken.
There were no cameras allowed in that room, but if there had been, every lens would have been locked on her. Gone was the image of the subdued first wife, the woman who'd spent decades fading into the background while others took center stage.
Not too long after I had been up in Utah and actually had that spiritual release from the church leaders.
Today, Meri was different. She was dressed in a dark blue blazer, her blonde hair pulled back into a no-nonsense knot, her posture unshakable. In her hand, she held a fat file, pages weighed down with years of evidence, quiet invoices of her sacrifices, and unacknowledged labor she had invested in sustaining her family. She did not blink.
I didn't feel emotionally supported during all of that.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I should be.
Why should you not be emotionally supported through that?
Because it's not really a divorce.
Not when she walked past Robyn, stiffly seated next to Kody. Not when her gaze met the man who had promised her spiritual honor and equal standing at his side. She moved toward the witness stand, sliding the microphone into place a fraction of an inch. The air felt heavy, each breath in the room suspended. And then she started. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady but threaded with the tremor of anger that had been buried deep for decades. "I stand here today to reclaim what was owed to me, not just as a wife, but as a woman, as a mother, as a human being." Her eyes flashed to Kody, arms crossed, jaw set, all the muscles in his face tensed into resistance. "I want what is mine," she said again, this time with more pointed strength, "and I am not going away." The gallery erupted into a low buzz. Fans of sister wives had watched Meri's marriage crumble over the course of years. Her devastation splashed on reality television screens, her loneliness building season by season. They had watched the catfish debacle, her hesitant struggles to hold on to the frayed edges of the family, and the isolation that came to rest on her like a cold shadow. But this was not that Meri. This was the Meri who had been driven too far. Because this was about Coyote Pass, a sprawling 12-acre property in Arizona that was never ever just dirt and trees. It was intended to be a shared dream, an equal heritage, a vow etched into the future of the family. But somewhere in the process, that vow had been secretly taken away from them. Behind Meri stood Janelle, arms folded, lips clamped into an unforgiving line. They had both weathered years since their early years in the family, but Janelle's eyes still contained the same passion now raging in Meri's, a passion ignited by betrayal. These women were no longer sister wives. Today, they stood as teammates in a war they never imagined they would have to fight. The judge, a serene woman with many years of experience imprinted in the lines on her face, nodded slightly at Meri. "Mrs. Brown, you may continue." Meri unfolded her first exhibit. "This," she told the court, holding up the page, "is an August 14th, 2018 payment receipt, a deposit from my business checking into the family trust." She paused to let her words weigh. That trust was intended to pay for Coyote Pass, and yet my name was never put on the deed. She produced a second paper. "This is a letter from our real estate agent verifying my financial stake in the property." Her tone grew taut. "And this," she held up another page, her knuckles going white around it, "is a copy of the sister wives agreement that we signed each of us. Each wife agreed that what we earned from being on film would be used to create our joint future here. 4 houses for 4 wives on Coyote Pass." Meri's attorney nodded slightly in encouragement. Meri went on, her tone now laced with steel. "When Kody and I filed for divorce in 2014 so he could adopt Robyn's kids, I agreed, because I thought the spiritual equality he promised would still be there. I believed the covenants we made as a family would be kept." She directed her eyes completely at him. That was a lie. Kody's jaw clenched again. Robyn squirmed uncomfortably, her eyes dropping to the ground. Meri continued, "I gave 30 years of my life to this family. I raised a child. I assisted in the building of a television show which provided for this land. And I am now being informed, quietly, in back rooms, that I am not worthy of a single acre. Her fists clinched the stand's edge. I gave up my lawful marriage. I gave up my voice. But I'm finished giving up everything else. Behind her, Janelle nodded slightly as if she were just thinking, me too. Meri squared her shoulders and spoke directly to the judge. This isn't about property. This is about dignity, about honoring commitments, about not allowing one man to revise history to suit his own needs. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Brown, are you telling the court the Coyote Pass property was always intended to be divided between the 4 wives equally? Yes, Your Honor. That's the way it was agreed. Verbally, emotionally, financially, and in writing. Did you realize your name wasn't on the deed? Not until late 2023, Meri said. Janelle and I compared papers. That's when we knew. And what did you do? I stood up to Kody. He told me he did more work, so he should get more. But that was never about who did what. Our family created it as a family. The judge nodded ponderously, taking notes. Kody's attorney leapt to his feet, protesting what he described as emotional framing, asserting Meri's contribution had been spiritual, not financial. Meri's lawyer, keen-eyed and unflinching, stood. If it pleases the court, this family lived under one budget. Money earned through TV, joint accounts, and common purchases for their business endeavors, all muddled together by Mr. Brown's handiwork. Meri wasn't a spiritual accessory. She was an unpaid business partner in a decades-long enterprise that bought Coyote Pass. The judge cocked an eyebrow. Outside, journalists already waited on the courthouse steps. Inside, tension hung thick enough to slice. Kody glared at Meri without averted eyes. Once, she had regarded him with love. Now she regarded him as an enemy, and maybe the most lethal sort, one who has already lost everything and has nothing left to lose. Because Coyote Pass was not just acreage. It was a symbol. It was the final strand Meri had grasped. The thin hope that perhaps she was still a member of the family. But now that dream was lost. In the waiting room, Meri and Janelle sat beside each other as their lawyers organized exhibits. Between them on the table lay a map of Coyote Pass, 4 quadrants marked, 1 for each wife. But the quiet was broken by Janelle's voice. Our names aren't on any of this. Not a square inch. Meri remained quiet. She had been aware for months. The betrayal wasn't a blow, but a slow bleed, concealed by decades of gaslighting, TV smiles, and Kody's constantly shifting visions. She recalled the early days in Flagstaff, huddled around the fire pit while Kody sketched the vision. 4 homes, 1 for each of the wives. Close enough to be a family, distant enough to have room. Our heritage. Robyn had smiled. Christine had raised an eyebrow. Janelle had questioned with pragmatism. And Meri had held on to those words like air. Her legal marriage had already been sacrificed so Kody could adopt Robyn's children. But he had reassured her, "You'll always be my wife in every way that matters." Those words now sounded less like comfort and more like a warning she hadn't recognized in time. The truth was revealed in 2023. Janelle was at the courthouse to sort out a late notice on property tax and discovered the truth. "Your name wasn't on it," she said to Meri afterward. "Neither was mine." Only 2 names kept popping up, Kody Brown and Robyn Brown. When questioned, Kody said it was because he had put more money in. Janelle mocked cynically when Meri informed her he'd said the same to her. This was not new pattern. It was a habit. Kody had moved the goalposts, promising publicly and then covertly changing the terms in private over the course of years. And Meri had remained, through public embarrassment, through the catfish scandal, through the agonizing fact that he had lost sight of her as partner. She remained because she had believed loyalty would be repaid. Her lawyer's words penetrated her mind. This is not property law. It's fiduciary duty. If he agreed to share equally and then transferred ownership in secret, that might be constructive fraud. Janelle's lawyer concurred. And especially when money was commingled, that creates a trust. If he breached the trust without notice, that is intent. Meri looked down at the 2021 land transfer document. Plot 3 transferred to joint tenancy with Robyn Brown. The evidence was staring her in the face. Black and white. No signatures from the other women. No warning. No disclosure moment where they all sat together at the table and consented. Only 2 names. Kody Brown and Robyn Brown carved into the legal ownership document. The quietest betrayal, done through paperwork and silence. And when Kody was confronted with justifying, he had his prepared alibi at the ready. In his deposition, he slouched back, looking almost smug, and presented his infamous assertion. "I paid for 92% of the land." 92%. A figure he used as if it was conclusive evidence of his goodness. He spoke as if the mathematics itself vindicated him. The others agreed to pay, he claimed. But I lent the money. I had to be in charge to ensure the land was constructed properly. He even smiled, as if the reasoning was airtight. It wasn't, because everyone in that courtroom understood that the 92% wasn't entirely his to keep. Those dollars originated from the bread and butter of the Sister Wives empire. Interviews, public events, book signings, merch. All income founded on the phenomenon of a big working family. And that phenomenon only existed because of the women, because of their involvement, because of Meri, because of Janelle. Meri's lawyer didn't let that go. Sitting forward, voice slicing like a knife, she inquired, "You're saying you paid 92%, but from whose profit, Mr. Brown? Didn't the money come from a show Meri and Janelle participated in?" Kody sat rigid. They were involved, but did they receive equal compensation from the show? Number I handled distribution. And who chose to distribute it? TLCA manager? Or just you? The room went silent. That silence spoke volumes. Kody had constructed his kingdom upon the backs of women who thought they were co-owners. And yet, now it was apparent. He'd always regarded them as tenants. Transient, interchangeable, disposable. And Robyn? She wasn't merely an innocent bystander standing by while all this played out. Court documents showed emails from her to the real estate attorney who was handling the Coyote Pass files. One sentence stood out like a slap to the courtroom. "We don't want the other wives to make things messy. Better if we finalize everything before they notice." The defense rushed to water it down, claiming Robyn intended keeping the process simple due to legal concerns, never concealing it from the other wives. But Meri's attorney jumped on it. If this was for simplicity's sake, why were the wives not told? Why was there no gathering? Why was Meri's tax burden still attached to land she didn't own legally? No one knew, because the actual answer was the one nobody wanted to speak out loud. Meri went alone to Coyote Pass weeks prior to the trial. The night was bitter with an air that sliced through her coat. Pine needles snapped beneath her boots. She stood in the open area, gazing out at the land that once meant so, much more than soil. Back in 2018, she had stood in nearly the same spot as Kody waved his arms dramatically, painting the dream. "We'll put a porch here. You'll have the best view." She'd smiled then, imagining coffee on that porch, grandchildren laughing in the yard, maybe even a softened future where she and Kody could mend what had been broken. Now, alone there, she saw only deception strewn on the ground. She stooped and picked up a stone. "If I don't struggle," she thought, "this will be the only thing I ever gain from this earth." So when Janelle and Meri stepped into that courtroom, it wasn't about a lawsuit. It was a line in the sand. They were told for years to be silent, to trust, to obey, that patience would be rewarded and that God would see loyalty. But patience doesn't construct houses. Obedience doesn't purchase property. Kody had constructed his fantasy upon their backs. And when he finished building it, he closed the door on them. The judge ordered a brief recess, but no one stirred. The room was as tense as glass, paper thin, fragile, on the verge of breaking. Meri smoothed her blouse, her breathing calm but her heart pounding. Not fear, but the thrill of justice finally bucking back against decades of lies. The clerk stepped forward. "Mrs. Brown, come back to the stand." A quiet swept over the courtroom. As she stood, Meri's gaze scanned Kody and Robyn. He sat rigid and expressionless, drumming his fingers as if waiting out the seconds before he could respond. Robyn spoke in low, frantic tones to their lawyer, glancing nervously at Meri. Neither, however, could avert their gaze as she moved deliberately, bearing centuries of buried fact to the witness stand. Her voice pierced the stillness, calm at first. "Your Honor, I waited 30 years in a household where silence wasn't loyalty. It was policy. I was instructed to wait, to trust, to expect everything would even out if I just hung on long enough." She paused. "Waiting doesn't put your name on a deed. Waiting doesn't safeguard your rights. And that's why I'm standing here today." Her lawyer placed a fat folder on the bench. More than 40 items of evidence. Payment transfers, legal documents, emails, text records, and most incriminatingly of all, unredacted show contracts and letters with TLC. Meri waved one document in the air. "This is the 2018 agreement, signed by every member of our family, stipulating that the money from TLC and joint business revenue would be put equally into developing and dividing Coyote Pass. Admitted as Exhibit 17A, the judge affirmed. Meri's eyes scanned the courtroom. "We were promised each parcel would be ours." Kody said it, on camera, off camera, that this was our inheritance. But in 2023, I found out the land had been divided up without our say, and every parcel was in Kody and Robyn's hands. A shocked murmur ran through the room. Even the judge shifted forward, elbows on the bench. Meri's lawyer produced the email. Evidence. From February 2021, Kody to the lawyer. I think it's better to get the paperwork done before the wives begin asking questions. Less drama down the line. And from March 2021, Robyn to the same lawyer. Only Kody and I are taking seriously the land investment. The others can build later if they choose to. The gasps were instantaneous. That's taken out of context. Kody snapped. The judge's gavel cracked. Mr. Brown, you will remain silent unless addressed. Meri didn't flinch. I was never notified of a deed transfer. My name, despite my financial contributions from my business and my appearances, was erased from legal ownership. Yet I still paid property taxes. Why? Because I trusted you. She turned directly toward Kody. And you took that trust and made me invisible. She produced another document. Here's a payment. $18,200 from my LuLaRoe earnings into the joint account to pay for this land. I have 6 of these transfers. I was assured these secured my plot. She turned back to the judge. Now, I'm being told that I didn't pay enough, that I wasn't invested. But I was invested. My money, my time, my dignity, for a man who erased me. The judge leaned forward. So you are claiming there were good faith verbal, written, and monetary agreements, and your name was subsequently deleted? Yes, Your Honor. And you claim Mr. Brown and Mrs. Robyn Brown behaved in bad faith in transferring title without disclosure? Yes. Are you willing to pursue full damages or forced partition of the land? Without hesitation, Meri said, I'm prepared to reclaim what's mine. Either they buy me out at market value, or the land is split as promised. Finally, it was Kody's turn. He mounted the stand like a man walking to his own undoing. Jaw clenched, arms crossed, the picture of someone convinced he's still in control. Did you tell Meri Brown about the deed transfer? The judge asked. No. Why not? I didn't believe she was interested anymore. She was distant. I didn't believe she wanted to construct there. Did she make a monetary contribution to the land? He paused. She may have. I don't know. Meri's lawyer intervened. Are these her bank transfers? Kody looked at them. Yes. So she donated. And yet you excluded her. I had to move quickly, Kody explained, his voice increasing in pitch. Robyn and I were the only ones being serious. The courtroom hummed. A journalist wrote furiously. The judge's face darkened. Mr. Brown? She demanded. Did you employ common family funds to buy property which you titled only in your name and your lawful wife's name? Kody's hesitation was drawn out to the point where it seemed to be an admission before finally the words were spoken. Yes. And that's it. And suddenly the mask cracked. It was the moment the meticulously honed image started to unravel. The wise, commanding patriarch that Kody Brown had created for TV, the persona he so comfortably wore like armor, was being taken away from him piece by piece. And what lies beneath? We saw not the dominant leader, but a man who manipulated trust for his own gain, abused the very money generated by the women in his life, and used intimidation as a tool to hold them in check. And there, mere feet from her, Robyn sat. Her head dipped low, fingers wrapped across her forehead as if hiding from the eyes of the judge could also hide her from the reality that was about to come crashing down upon her. The cameras, some footage never aired on TLC, would later confirm what witnesses already knew. This wasn't just an argument gone too far. This was a calculated pattern, a deception. And that night, those images would be used to piece together a timeline of betrayal that had been years in the making. Then came something nobody had dared to imagine. Meri Brown, the woman who once lived in Kody's shadow, silenced and shunted aside for years, finally found her voice. She didn't merely speak. She challenged him, right there in the open, with all her truth. And the courtroom listened. They believed her. Outside, she stood on the courthouse steps, her demeanor firm, her voice quavering but unshaken. Reporters mobbed her. Fans yelled encouragement. Microphones were inches from her mouth. But Meri had not come to luxuriate in camera time or fan the fires of melodrama. She gazed into the cameras and said, I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I came here to stop being erased. Those words sliced as glass. For far too long, she and all the others had been instructed to smile, to keep the peace, to accept Kody's version of events that he wanted the world to know. But that was ending. This is about equality. This is about truth, she went on. And this is about never letting someone else tell your story for you. Janelle hung back from her, silent but determined, and gave Meri a small, serious nod. And then, side by side, they walked away, leaving Kody's empire trembling on its foundation. But in the courtroom, the room was going to become charged. The judge commanded the next witness. "Mrs. Robyn Brown, come forward." You could sense the room stop moving. Even the quiet rustle of papers and the squeak of chairs stopped. Robyn rose slowly, each click of her heels echoing on the polished floor. This was not the confident, camera-ready Robyn we'd seen on TLC. Gone was the warm smile, the carefully curated favorite wife glow. In her place was a woman staring down the very real possibility that her role in this story was about to be exposed. She flattened the sleeve of her cardigan with trembling hands before sitting down. The bailiff's voice echoed, "Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" A whispery, "Yes." And it started. Her lawyer began gently, walking her through testimony. "Mrs. Brown, can you explain your understanding of how the Coyote Pass land was supposed to be distributed?" Robyn nodded, her voice trembling. "It was always my assumption it was for all of us. One share each. That's what Kody used to say. Did you feel Meri and Janelle had part of it?" "At first, yes, but then things changed. Christine left. Meri was aloof. Janelle was furious. I felt like I was the only one still dedicated to bringing the dream into being. Were you included in the paperwork?" "I signed a few things, but I left the legal stuff to Kody." The lawyer leaned in more. "So you didn't know those deeds left Meri and Janelle out?" Robyn faltered. "Not at first." The response was cagey, walking the tightrope between denial and admission. But Meri's lawyer was not going to let her get away. Cross-examination commenced, and the cracks were evident straight away. "You claim you trusted Kody, but isn't it a fact that you were a joint owner on at least 3 parcels of land in Coyote Pass?" "Yes, but I didn't realize the others were being excluded." "And you didn't get a raise in your eyebrow? Even with the knowledge that land was to be divided 4 ways?" "I thought they were no longer interested. So instead of inquiring, you signed papers placing that land in your name and Kody's alone?" Robyn blinked furiously. "I was merely obeying instructions." The words clogged the air. Then the shocker, the lawyer produced a note purportedly written by Robyn to the property lawyer. "We do not want the other wives to make it messy. Better if we get it all done before they notice." Gasps soared through the courtroom. Robyn froze, her complexion draining of color. I didn't mean it that way. I meant emotional mess. I was trying to avoid conflict." But the attorney cut in. "Mrs. Brown, you and your husband constructed a land transfer that removed 2 women, who helped finance it, from any legal ownership." Robyn's voice wavered. "I didn't know." "You signed it. I trusted him." The words were louder than she meant to say. Defensive, nearly desperate. I thought they didn't care anymore." Her voice cracked, and so did her composure. She wept openly as she struggled out. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." The judge granted a recess, but Robyn shook her head. "Number, I want to say this." And then she let it all spill. Years of bottled-up anger and resentment. "For years, I've been blamed for everything. The fans despise me. The other wives detest me. I was just trying to guard what was left of the family. I didn't volunteer to be the legal wife. I didn't volunteer special treatment." She turned back to Meri, her eyes red and begging. "I'm sorry, I never meant to push you aside." But Meri didn't move. No crying, no acceptance nod. She just sat there, observing the woman who had, by intent or by accident, taken everything from her finally break under the crushing weight of her own guilt. The lawyer laid the coup de grace. "Intent is important, Mrs. Brown, but so is accountability. You benefited from property paid for in large measure by women you let be left out. You own 3 plots in common. You reside in a big house constructed prior to the others even starting foundations. And your name is on deeds they helped pay for. You did not complain. You did not act. You didn't fix it." A silence. That is not trust. That is complicity. The room fell silent. Robyn's tears dripped silently into her lap. The gallery, longtime fans of Sister Wives, was an emotional storm. Some of them felt sorry for the family. Others were upset. But first and foremost, there was acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of a familiar narrative, one in which women are instructed to remain silent, to trust, to be thankful, and to then sit back and watch as someone else enjoys the fruit of their labor. This was no longer just about Meri and Robyn. It was about truth, about whether favoritism-based systems and silences could ever be held accountable. The judge's tone was firm. "Mrs. Brown, signing over ownership without proper care, or worse, with the aim of amassing power, is serious. There will be repercussions. Robyn nodded mutely and resumed her seat. Kody hardly looked in her direction. On that day, the balance changed. Meri stood taller than ever, not only in the courtroom, but in the eyes of all who were watching. She had unraveled the favorite wife myth not with fury, but with verifiable facts. And in so doing, she reclaimed the one thing Kody would never possess, her story. Outside, a reporter asked her, "Meri, do you think Robyn meant to hurt you?" Meri paused, then answered calmly, "It's not what she intended that matters. It's what she did." 3 weeks would pass before the final verdict. 3 long, exhausting weeks since the war in that courtroom began. But already, Kody's armor was dented, Robyn's tears had dried, and Meri's quiet strength had left a mark that would not fade. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The atmosphere in that court was so thick it could be cut with a knife as the judge returned, holding the ultimate decision. You could sense the gravity of it before anything was said. Meri sat straight, her stance serene, but you could tell the steel was lurking underneath. Next to her, Janelle had the look of the silent warrior, a still presence poised to take what was taken. Across the row, Robyn wrung a crumpled tissue between her fingers, her eyes jumping nervously. And there was Kody, leaned forward, arms folded, sporting that familiar, cocky confidence. The type of expression that tells you, "Of course I'll win. I always do. But not this time." The judge pushed up her glasses, her tone firm but crisp. She stated that oral, written, and financial contracts had been entered into by all the adult participants in the sale of Coyote Pass. These weren't loose-fingered handshakes or breezy chats. They were promises, continually brought before the family, the public, and even TLC as equal and enforceable. Meri's attorney gave her the smallest nod, the kind that says, "We've got them." Then came the blow. Meri and Janelle had proven, through financial records, recorded footage, and contractual evidence, that they had legitimate, binding rights to that land. And worse for Kody, the court found that he, with Robyn's help, had knowingly taken and secured legal ownership without fair disclosure or compensation. The decision was irrevocable. The land would be reassessed at its current value, and Meri and Janelle would have equal financial restitution. Or alternatively, the land would be sold, with profits divided evenly, 25% to each of the original 4 wives. And with that, justice arrived. Meri did not cheer. She didn't weep. She let out a long, steady breath, a decade of grief exhaled in one breath, 30 years of being overlooked, a lifetime of waiting her turn and being told she did not count. She looked at Janelle, and they exchanged a silent, knowing smile. Janelle's hand squeeze spoke volumes. Joy, vindication, and a hint of righteous anger. On the other side of the aisle, Robyn covered her face with her hands. Kody's back was turned, not wanting to see Meri, the judge, or even the truth. The media storm erupted as soon as they left. Social media went wild, viewers posting memes, support messages, and just plain outrage. Meri deserved this. Kody can't gaslight his way through this one. Robyn's tears weren't effective this time. Later, at the press conference, Meri stood firm behind a podium. Janelle sat beside her, flanked by her lawyers and a group of largely women who had tracked this case over years. Reporters yelled, cameras flashed, but Meri held up her hand. Her voice was steady, but the belief was unshakable. "I never wanted it to end like this. I believed in this family. I gave it everything. My time, my loyalty, my name, my silence. But silence doesn't bring justice. And loyalty does not mean surrender." She glared into the cameras, talking to every woman who'd ever been made to feel invisible. "For years, I was told I didn't count, that I wasn't enough, that my pain wasn't real. Today, I have been heard." The audience exploded, some of the reporters even clapping. "I didn't come here to ruin anyone," she went on. "I came here to reclaim what was mine. And beyond that, to reclaim myself." That line landed like a punch. Back in Flagstaff, the damage was already done. Kody was furious in a surprise interview, referring to it all as revenge and publicity. His tone was bitter. "That land was mine. I purchased it." But the facts had been determined in court, and even his own children were having their say. Gwendolyn posted, "Mom was right. So was Meri. They earned that land." Peyton made a TikTok, bluntly stating, "Kody's not the victim. He's just angry because he got caught." Robyn remained quiet. Curtains closed. There was gossip that she would leave the show in its entirety, and that TLC officials were reconsidering her position. The queen of the Brown clan? Her throne didn't seem so secure now. Months after, a completely different Meri was seen on screen. She was in her new cabin-type home in Utah's mountains. a home she purchased using her part of the court settlement. It was not enormous or gaudy, but it was hers. Each wall, each acre was evidence that she had taken back her life. She streamed live to her fans, smiled, and took them through the house. "This is not a house," she whispered. "It's evidence that you can begin anew. At any age, anywhere." The remarks poured in. "We're so proud of you, Meri. You make women everywhere proud." She ended the video with a coffee cup that said, "I matter." And that's the truth. The trial was about land, but the win was about something much larger: identity. For so long, the show portrayed Meri as desperate, clingy, even weak. The truth? She was loyal to the point of fault. And when that devotion is manipulated, it becomes a prison. That courtroom was the key. It exposed Kody's so-called leadership for what it really was: control dressed up as love. It showed the world that Robyn's tears weren't always pure. And it proved that Meri's silence was never weakness. It was patience. She was waiting for her moment. And when it came, she didn't whisper. She roared. If you're looking for more in-depth dives into the actual stories of what goes on behind the scenes with the Brown family and all the TTLC won't give you, be sure to subscribe and enable notifications. Because believe me, we're just getting started.